Hello, Blue Valley. This is Mr. Hume, librarian at Blue Valley Middle School, and I'm here to do another First Chapter Friday for you. And the book I've selected this time is called Last of the Name, which is a historical fiction book. I tend to gravitate a lot towards historical fiction because I love history and like fiction, and so put the two together, and that's where I'm at. So this is a story about the Civil War, U.S. Civil War, and orphans that are trying to survive during the Civil War in New York City, and and just talk about all the different groups that were living in New York City at that time. New York's always had a lot of diversity, and all the things that they had to do in order to survive at that time, which was a rough time. So I will read the first chapter of this, and hopefully it'll be something that you'll be interested in picking up on your own. Chapter 1, Thursday, March 19th, 1863. Granny says I'm 7 devils in 1 pair of shoes. She doesn't know the half of it. Trouble is always nipping at my heels. Tonight it's me and all 7 of them devils, tiptoeing past sleeping folk in the hold, and them that are coughing too hard to sleep. I step over bags and babies. I skirt around foul-smelling puddles and kick at rats. I just can't lie in the dark and hear Granny cough and feel her shaking with fever and do nothing. If Kathleen gives up her daily bread for me one more time, I'll die of shame. If I was bigger, I'd clout her over the head and make her eat her own portion, fair and square. But she's having none of it. You're the last of the name, Daniel O'Carolan, she said to me over the midday ration. I swore I'd protect you, and you'll eat what I give you, or you take a hiding, they'll flay the skin right off of you. Granny won't take her food either. Our whole long walk from the poorhouse in Ballavourney to the docks in the cove, she divided out every crumb we ever begged for in 3 even shares. But the fever has a hold of her by the throat, and she's changed. All the strength goes to you now, she said to me. She handed back the bread. You two will need every bit of it. You'll eat what I give you, Kathleen said to Granny, sliding straight into the role of woman of the house without invitation. It's you we need, she added. We don't know a soul in New York. You'll not be alone, Granny said. She tapped her bundle with a knowing smile. She kept it at her side ever since last summer when the landlord burned us out of our own home. She's guarded it fiercely day and night. When I asked her what's in it, she only says, it's ours, and tells wild stories about the kings of Ireland and their great feasts and the golden halls and the master harpers who sang and played for the dancing. The more feverish she gets, the more she slips into this shadow world where the Irish are the kings, where you can sing the old songs and dance the jigs and reels without fear of prison. She tells her wild tales over and over until she's worn out. Do something, I said to Kathleen. If it were a wound, she'd have her needle and thread out like a shot. There's nothing she can't mend in the way of cloth. Stitched the brothers back together more than once, she has. There's nothing to do but pray, she said. She counted out the rosary on a knotted string. I said my prayers already, counted them out on my fingers 10 times. Maybe God can't hear me for the coughing. I can't bear it a moment longer. I won't. Granny needs food, real food. I found the galley steps in the dark and tiptoed onto the deck. After the hold, fresh air is as sweet as clean water. I creep across the deck in darkness. The crew eats better than us. If I could get to their stores, Granny will get stronger. She's had nothing but moldy bread and shriveled potatoes. I tiptoe along the rail to the galley door. Not a sound comes from inside. The food is in the brig, under lock and chain. The shadows of the passageway give me cover. A single lamp swings above. Casks and chests are stacked shoulder high. I run to the brig, turn sideways, breathe all the way out, and slide through the bars. My shirt tears and a little bit of my skin, but I'm inside. The smell of food, the whole roomful, it almost brought me to my knees. More food in this one spot than I've seen in a lifetime. For the moment, I take a notion of cracking open the barrels and feasting like a lord. But I know better. I only need a little. Something to bring a dash of color to Granny's face. A morsel of anything that will give her strength to stand. I duck down and worm my way through the barrels. A musty smell betrays which ones hold the rations that they've been feeding the passengers. Smaller casks of rum and salt beef and smoked fish are off to one side. I could only dream of such rich fare. Granny would never be able to eat them, sick as she is. There's a brine of mold on a great wheel of cheese and firkins and of butter nailed shut too tight for me to open. Barrels of flour and salt are no good to me, but in the back I smell something sweet, something I haven't smelled in so long that I almost can't place it. I tiptoe to the back and pry open the lid. Apples. There was an apple tree by the crossroads where Kathleen and I took school in secret. The tree had apples of gold with red speckles, great drooping branches full of fruit. Now Kathleen's a proper scholar and wouldn't have walked across an ocean of fire for school, but me, well, sometimes I'd go just for those golden apples, and I'd bring them home by the armloads for Ma and Granny and all my brothers. I stick my head right into the barrel and breathe in the sweet tang of the fruit. Sometimes when Packy and Christy found work, they brought home flour. Sometimes John did the Lord's milking and churning and got a portion of the butter for pay. Then we'd have bread and apples for dinner instead of potatoes. Didn't I feel like a king on those days? If Da had still been with us, I wouldn't have had the sorrow in the world. I reach in and draw out an apple. My hand shakes and my mouth waters as I tuck it away in my coat pocket. I should go. I should creep away back to the granny. I've got what she needs, but I haven't had an apple in a year. It's been nothing but ship's rations and workhouse gruel and whatever we could beg on the road. The barrel calls to me again. My apple is red and wrinkled. I should put it back, but I tell myself I'll just smell it. The trouble with hunger is that when there isn't any food at all, you can tell yourself you don't need any and half believe it. But as soon as the smallest morsel goes in your mouth, the hunger wakes up in you like a wild creature. I sink my teeth in the apple and feel the burst of tart sweetness like a bolt of lightning that dazzles your eye and leaves you blind. I bite and chew and gasp, licking the streams of juice that run down my chin. The honey goodness of it fills me up. Without thinking, I start doing the shuffle hops up of the light jig, just for the joy of having food in my mouth. "Aye, who's there?" comes the gruff voice from the passage. I freeze, apple juice running down my chin. "Show yourself!" A sailor brings the lantern to the door of the brig. He's broad-shouldered and black as a bottle of ink. He rattles the chain. I silently slide to the floor. There's a long pause. My heartbeat can be heard from one end of the ship to the other. I'm sure of it. The man gives me the nearest barrels a shake. Rats scatter and I shake. And when I shake the barrels, the key snicks into the lock and the chain clanks free. There's an easy way to do this and a hard way. He pulls back the hammer of a pistol until it clicks. My mind snaps back to Packy and the bloody back wall of the police station. The English caught him stealing food, they say. They never proved it in court, never had to, not to shoot an Irishman. Would this sailor shoot a boy? He doesn't look English, but he sounds like them. I raise my hands above my head, above the barrels, and slowly I stand up. Aye, for pity's sake, the sailor lowers his pistol. Look at the state of you. You're barely thicker than a stalk of wheat. Did you stow away? I shake my head vigorously. My heart runs like a rabbit. He could shoot me right here and they'd never know what became of me. I'm only ranked to mete out discipline to rats. The captain will see for this. The ship's contract has a litany of flogging offenses. Stealing food tops the list. The sailor takes hold of the scruff of my jacket and steers me before him. Every step of the way I remember my Packy, shot for stealing food. My Da, sent clear to Australia for stealing food. Ma, Christy, and John, all gone, and me the last one to carry out the name. I'm going to die in a wide ocean where they won't even set a gravestone over my body, all for the taste of an apple. The captain's cabin is a lord's estate, all packed into one room. Candlesticks and shining pewter on the table, maps and pens and inks on the desk, books in the cabinet, and food on the table, a mountain of it between the captain and his quartermaster. The sailor stands in the door. "Found him in the stores, Captain." "A thief," the quartermaster says. "Who left the stores unlocked?" said the captain. "Not I," the quartermaster says. "Chained and locked, sir." The sailor nudges me forward. "He stole the key then. Shake out his pockets." I'd been ready to take a flogging if only I could keep Granny's apple, but they'll find it for sure if they search me. Then I'll get a double flogging and Granny'll get nothing. I don't need a key. Hands clenched. I make a quarter turn so the captain can see that I'm thin enough to slip between the bars. Christ almighty, how can I expect it to keep those dregs of humanity alive when they're starving before they set foot on the ship? "It's a flogging offense, Captain. Won't be a crumb left for us if we let them have their way with their stores." The quartermaster glares at the sailor, who's still got me by the collar. The sailor opens the top of my coat and shirt and pulls it down to my elbows. He pulls my back to the captain for the beating. A year ago, when the police dragged me Packy away, he shouted to me and Christy and John, "Don't ever bow down to them, no matter what they do to you." I grit my teeth and stand straight and tall, like I'm getting ready to dance. My brother's shoulder to shoulder with me at the crossroads. I step down the line, each one of us, and then shuffle hop bangs all in time together. Whatever happened, dancing with my brothers beside me made it bearable. I know what's coming. I've seen it before. I won't bow down to it. The captain's chair scrapes backwards. Heavy footfalls across the room. I stomp my foot for courage. I bang down again on the heel to keep from crying, and follow it with a beat from the toe. Again, heel and toe, and again, heel and toe, heel and toe, heel and toe, like the floor out of the drum that calls soldiers to battle. Faster, louder, heel and toe, heel and toe, heel and toe, heel and toe. The flogging doesn't come. What's that? The sailor points to the red speckled on my heaving ribs. Is that a pox? He edges away. Scurvy. The captain puts a hand on my shoulders and presses down to stop me dancing. When did the hunger come on you? My breath comes in gasps. Last summer? The boy will die if we flog him. Slowly I turn around, arms still pinned to my sides by my shirt. We can't just let him go, the quartermaster insists. There'll be trouble. True enough, the captain gives me a hard look. What will we do with you, little thief? It's not my fault I'm hungry. Not my fault the Lord threw us off our land. Not my fault my ma and brothers are dead. I don't want to go to America. I want my own cottage and my own farm, my own family around me. We'll run out of food if we let them steal and don't make them pay, the quartermaster says. We won't, the captain says sadly. That cough you hear from the whole day and night, it's typhus. A shiver of dread passes straight through me. Of dread. Bad enough are the English you can see. Typhus is every bit as brutal, but you can't see it coming. The captain goes on in a weary tone. We'll lose 20 of them by the end of the week, maybe 40. So no, quartermaster, running out of food is not my chief concern. He turns to me. But we can't let it be known that you stole food either. He grabs my shirt collar and pulls it back up to my shoulders. You and your family will spend the rest of the voyage on deck, away from the gossip and plotting below and away from the temptations to steal again. I nodded slowly, thinking about how cold the wind blows of the North Atlantic and all the rain. Kathleen comes staggering out of the hold, Granny slung over her shoulders like a parcel, bundle in one hand, case in the other. She'd rather make me watch her struggle than take my hand when she's angry. What have you done to us, you dirty caffler? She says, spitting venom. I take the case and bundle it to spite her and lead her towards the water barrels. This berth is forfeit, the man says to me. Forfeit? After we paid so dear for the passage? She cussed me upside the head. Was it not enough for Granny before? Do you have to make her sleep on the deck like a chicken in a coop? Are we to be nothing but livestock now? I will crack your head open and scramble your brains. She goes off in this vein for the whole long walk from the galley door. Near the bow, there's a space between two water barrels on the side of the ship. She slides Granny down from her shoulders, cradles her in her arms for a moment, and then props her up between the barrels. She flutters about Granny like a moth who can't stop circling the candle. Go, find us a blanket, or I'll box your ears so hard you'll not hear the church bell for a month. Do you hear me, little man? The black sailor is waiting at the door of the hold, and he's still got that pistol in his hand. You'll not set foot below. In truth, I'm not sorry. It's a relief to be out. The blankets were lively with bugs. I half expected my crubbers to crawl away from me in the middle of the night. I turned up my collar, but my coat and all its patches are no match for the March wind that comes singing out of the north with sleet in its teeth. Your captain didn't want me to die of a flogging, I said. He won't want me to die of a cold either. I follow him to the sail locker where he fishes out a few tattered specimens for my use. Back at the water barrels, Kathleen and Granny are thick as thieves, wrapped in one shawl together and talking treason by the look of it. Never let them see it. Granny pats the bundle resting in her lap, or it's hanged you'll be. But how did it save us? Kathleen says. I don't know how to. Didn't we always have rent when it asked for it? Didn't we get tickets to America when we had nowhere else to go? I still don't understand. Behind a barrel is as good a listening post as any. Always remember who you are, Granny says, descended of the great bards of old, honored by princes near and far they were, sought out for music and for counsel, keepers of history, writers of songs. Granny leans even closer to Kathleen. Richer than kings they were, for they made a king's feast merry and bound up his sorrows with sweet music. That was hundreds of years ago. What difference could it make now? What difference, Granny tells Kathleen a pinch. I love that. What difference they endured. They swore to remember, spent their own blood to keep it safe. Whatever happens to you, don't you ever hang your head. No matter how they try to shame you, don't let them who have sacrificed to keep this treasure before you die in vain. Kathleen weeps a little, but Granny keeps at her, making her place her hand on the little bundle and swear in the names of Jesus and Mary that she'll defend it. I come out of hiding when she's done. Granny looks up at me and smiles with a smile to warm an icicle off St. Stephen's Day. Here's himself, he says. What have you brought me? I tuck the torn sails around the two of them. When they are good and settled and the moon is rising and the crew is busy elsewhere, I take the apple out of my pocket and put it in Granny's hand. An apple at the end of winter, she says, amazed. Did the fairies give it to you? Kathleen gives me a look to peel paint off her wall. She's figured out how we came by our present luxury accommodations. The minute Granny's not looking, I'll be paying for it in bruises. The fairies, of course, I said, only to peeve her. She hates when Granny goes on about all the things the hedgemaster calls coarse and pagan. You can hear them, Granny says, in the riggings. She nods toward the tall mass of sails and ropes. It's the fairy wind. They've come for me at last. Eat it, I say. You'll get better. All you need is good food and clean air. She takes the apple in her weather-spotted hand and breathes in the smell of it, but then she hands it back. I remember the taste of apples. Her voice gets dreamier by the moment. I'm past all that now. You mustn't cling to me. I do cling to her, tight as I can. Me on one side and Kathleen on the other. I sing to keep them away, every hymn I know. Sing because I can, because it's all I have to give. We sing together straight through the night until the coldest, darkest part, right before the sun swims up above the ocean.